Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming and thank you for the introduction. So, my topic for today is this introduction to testing, and the main goal is to remove some of the myths or prejudices that you might have regarding testing. And the structure of this talk will be the first 5 minutes with a short introduction, and then we'll have 20 minutes of content, and then I will leave another 20-minute slot for your questions. So during the whole presentation, if you have questions, you can use the link on top to leave your question, and then at the end, we'll just go through them and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Alright, then let's get started with the introduction. So, hello everyone, my name is Diogo. I'm currently a tester and also a blogger. Actually, it was through my blog that I received this invitation for this talk. I have a blog for about 8 years now. It is called estudarinformatica.info, like study computer science.info, something like that. The main goal of the blog is to clarify doubts of students that are finishing high school and want to pursue computer science at the university. And one of those students was Guilherme, who emailed me in back in 2015. And fast forward 6 years, and he's now finishing the master's degree in computer science. And at the time, I was a developer, and now I'm a tester, so a lot changed in the meantime. Speaking of time, let me give you an overview of my career so far. So, like I said, I started as a developer, and that was after I did the bachelor and the master's degree in computer science. And I started at Deloitte, which is a big consultancy. And after 4 months, I decided to switch and go to a startup called Loity. I stayed there as a developer for 2 years. It was a small team. I think we were around 10 people total, and I stayed there as a developer for 2 years, and then I switched to Equal Experts, and that was the moment when I was offered a role opportunity as a tester. Even though I was applying for a developer, I was offered this tester role, and for me it was a big surprise, and I asked a few days to just have a think. When I say have a think, it was really just run home and Google what is testing, what does a tester do, is it right for me, something like that, because ironically, I had the opportunity to study testing at a master's degree. It was one of the subjects there, although I skipped it completely because I assumed that, oh, nobody does testing. Testing is just a waste of effort, and so on and so on. All those prejudices that I had at the time. And instead, I went for project management, which is something that I haven't used a single time because it was very waterfallish, the subject. And I think throughout, if most, if not all, of my career, I always used Kanban and agile practices. So, yeah, that was a waste. So in the end, I decided to accept the challenge, go for a tester role, and yeah, I stayed there for 4 years. I loved my job, and looking back, I think it was the right decision to make. And very recently, I changed to Springer Nature, which is a product company. Oh, and I forgot to say, Equal Experts was also a consultancy firm. So this just gives you an idea of all the flavors and combinations that I tried so far, from consultancy to product to startup to small, big companies, development, testing. So I tried a lot. So if you also have questions about that or how the market works or any of this, feel free to leave a question in the link above. All right, then let's get started with the content. Before I explain what a tester does in a team, let me take a step back and talk what is the purpose of testing. In our field, we talk a lot about information. That's where IT comes from, information technologies. And I think that's particularly relevant for testing because we work with information our whole day. And if I had to summarize the purpose of testing, it would be to gather information about our system, and our system can be an app or a website or something else. Gather that information, share it with the team so that our team can make better decisions and with more confidence. That's my definition of testing. To illustrate that definition with an example, we usually use this analogy of if you imagine your team as a car, then testing is the lights in the front that are showing the way to the driver. because, like I said, we are giving information to the team, in this case, the driver, of what is ahead, what are the dangers, giving information so that they can react and make better decisions and with more confidence. And that analogy is also useful to show you that the value that testing adds to the team is not always the same. It greatly depends on the context. Testing becomes very valuable in the context where there's a lot of uncertainty or complexity. So, following the analogy, let's say that you're driving in a highway in a clear, sunny day. There's not a lot of uncertainty there. It's just a straight line. So the value that testing adds there is very small, and that's fine. That's okay. But that's not how usually the IT projects go. So usually your scenario or your context will be driving in a cloudy day. It's probably during the night. There's a lot of curves in the roads. There might be holes or dangers in the street. So that's where testing really shines its value. And a tester is really a specialist within the team with a lot of experience and knowledge in testing and tools and practices to improve the quality inside their team. So it is very common for us to uh, wear many hats, as in carry on different roles within the team. I'll just give you a few examples of what those responsibilities look like. So probably the most common will be to be a bug hunter. So we'll spend a lot of our time interacting with the system and trying to find bugs, as in undesired behavior of our system. And then there's a lot of areas of expertise that we can focus on when looking for bugs. Let's say that we are looking for ways to exploit our system, maybe to either control its behavior from outside or to access some information that should be protected. Well, in that case, you're exploring security, and you have security testing, which is a big, big, big area of testing. Another area which is quite relevant today is figuring out how your system behaves if it receives more users than it was designed for. And in that case, you're talking about either load testing or performance testing. And the reason why I said it's very relevant today is with COVID and a lot of services needing to go digital, and users that previously carried out their activities in the physical world now have to do it online. There was a big surge of new users to the systems, and not all of them were ready to handle that kind of load. So that's just two examples of areas where we can look for bugs in our system, but there's many, many more. So once you found a few issues within your system, you bring that information into the team and you share, so that so that the team can react to that new information. And if you're not careful, you will likely become the messenger of bad news. And when people, especially developers, see you enter the room, they start shaking and getting afraid and cold sweats just from seeing you, just because most of the time when you come in, it's probably because you found a new issue and you're going to deliver bad news. So the reason why I highlighted this team member is for you to be aware that it's very important for you to have a good relationship with all the team members, no matter if they're developers or product owners or delivery leads and whatever. It is very important for you to have a good relationship with all of them. And in that particular case, then we have techniques to counter that. Two of them could be, instead of simply identifying the issue, you do a bit of investigation to try to figure out what was the root cause of that issue. So when you identify it and share it with the team, you're already providing more information that points towards where the problem is, so that the people who will have to fix it already have more information and don't have to spend as much time fixing the issue. They will highly appreciate your effort. And the other thing is, instead of just saying, here's a problem, now it's your problem, like passing the hot potato, you'll sit with them and pair with them. With them, I mean the person who will be fixing the issue. And that way, not only you get more context about your system, but the other person also sees you as part of the solution and not just a source of new problems. And one of the reasons why I said it's very important for you to have this good relationship is because also part of your role will be a bridge between different elements within your team. So, quick example, it's very often that developers try to speak with more business oriented people and they don't really understand each other because the language is not quite the same. So it's up to you as a tester to be the bridge or the translator between these two groups of people within your team. Another important actor will be the users, and you will not always have quick and direct access to them. So if you don't have direct access to your users, then you'll have to use a very important skill of a tester, which is empathy, because you'll have to interact with the system as a user would do. So it is very important for you to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and interact with the system as they would. And for that, again, there's techniques to do it. One of them is creating personas, which is like a fictional profile of the different types of users that interact with your system. So when you're when you're carrying out your testing, you're kind of role playing as a user, and like I said, the the greater empathy you have, then the better, because you'll be able to closely simulate how a user interacts, which will allow you to discover frustrations or issues or blockers before you actually release that feature, so that your team has time to fix those issues before they deliver, so that the user doesn't have to go through those frustrations. If you do have access to end users, then that's amazing, and you will closely pair with them and do sessions where they will interact with the system, given some goals, and you will observe and measure how good their interaction was, what kind of feedback they have about their experience, and then you take all that precious feedback and share with the team so that they can further tweak your system to be more suited to your users' needs. You will also be spending a lot of time interacting with the system in different ways, using different tools, also, like I said, using different personas and interacting with different patterns of behavior. So during all that kind of exploration, you'll discover a lot of information about your system, namely how it behaves and what are its limitations. And again, all that information is precious to share with the team so that they have more data when they need to decide what features to improve, if the system is ready to release or not, and in general, how it feels to use your system. So lastly, during all that exploration that you'll do, you will learn a lot about your system and how it behaves. So very often you'll become like an expert of your system, and people around you, even with outside your team, will recognize the knowledge that you have about the system, and they will come to you with questions about how it behaves, how they should perform something in the system. And it's also often that you'll be doing training or demos about your system, and once again, because you have all that information and experience on using your system. Also, and this responsibility is shared by both testers and developers. We in IT, we know that every day there is either new technologies, new tools, new practices. So we really need to keep this student mindset and be constantly learning and improving. So yeah, it's important to keep learning, and not only to improve the way we work, but also to take those tools and practices and bring them into the team and share the knowledge so that everyone can improve and be better at their job. So yeah, those are just five examples of the responsibilities that the tester has in a development team. Now I'll just give you a few counter examples of what is not really the role of a tester. So the role of a tester is not just breaking the system. This was an expression that I heard a lot when I was during the university, like the developers were some kind of monkeys in a room pressing keys randomly and just trying to break the system. Um, it is part of our job to try to break the system. That's fine. We actually call it chaos testing. It's one of the techniques. For example, Netflix is one of the companies that uses that technique. The issue that I have here is just trying to summarize the whole testing to this kind of activity, which is not accurate or right. The other thing is speaking as testing as only automated tests, like there's nothing else besides it. Even recently, I've been receiving job offers that just say QA for automation, and I just completely refuse and stop reading the rest of the job offer because automated tests or checks, as our community distinguishes, they have their purpose. Its purpose is to confirm what you knew about the system is still true, still holds, and that's great. That's useful information. The issue is that's static information. That's something you knew about the system continues to be true. It's like a bubble of knowledge and it never grows up because tests are always checking the same thing. So that's why I highlighted the exploration part in the roles of a tester, because it's the exploration that will make that bubble grow and grow and grow, because you'll be exploring and interacting with the system in different ways, and that's what will give you new information about the system. And that's what you really want to new information and know as much as possible from your system. And there's another thing, these automated checks will not give you information that is subjective about your system or emotional, which is stuff like is the system easy to use? Is it intuitive? Is it slow? Is it complex? Is it frustrating to use? These are qualities about your system that only a human can really measure and feel, and it's as important as the other information about how your system behaves, because in the end, most of the cases, there will be a user and there will be a human at the other end interacting with your system, using it to try to accomplish some task or some goal. And these subjective qualities that I was mentioning are very often the reason why a user will choose a competitive over you. And finally, I have an issue with this assure quality. Actually, that's where the QA comes from, quality assurance. And I think it's wrong because we're selling the wrong expectation, because we as testers, we cannot assure quality. And this photo is taken from NASA, that the quality of their testing actually influences lives, and even so, mistakes happen. So selling this idea that a tester, which is not a perfect being. We're human as everyone else, and we commit mistakes as everyone else. We cannot be expected to assure quality. We can be expected to introduce techniques and tools within our team to ensure a minimum level of quality and to try to have a net that is as thin as possible and catches as much issues as possible before they go live, but we cannot assure because everyone makes mistakes. All right, we're coming to the end. Just a few examples of what happens if you focus or not in testing within your team. If you do, then in the end, your system just works, and that's good enough. That's already a lot better than most of the software that is out there. And what testers do is a lot of backstage work, because what we do is we try to identify issues that will affect our users, fix it before it actually reaches the user's hands. Our main goal is that the users can accomplish what they want from the system, and if possible, to have a positive experience. When we don't focus on quality, we have issues like this. So this is what happens if we just focus on testing components of our system in isolation, but then we forget to test how they will interact between each other. Another example is when we develop a specific solution that doesn't fit the context where it's going to be applied. Again, this is something that with testing can be accomplished. One of the techniques is Three Amigos, where before we actually start implementing a solution or a feature, we get one person from development, one from business, and one from testing, and we have a discussion of how that solution should be implemented. And that's where we will find out if it really makes sense to implement that kind of solution in that particular context. Okay, so that's all that I had to share with you. Now I'll have a look at the questions that you have been leaving during the talk, and I'll try to answer them. Okay, so that's the end of the talk. Once again, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for your questions. If you want to know more about testing, feel free to follow my blog. You'll find my blog and my contacts at www.diogonunes.com. And bye bye. Have a nice day.